This is actually the second half of the first video I did reviewing Israeli combat footage, so if you haven't seen that video, I'll have it linked at the end of this one. This is supposed to be a school. There's a hole on the bottom right of where these soldiers are that they're taking gunfire from. It's a pretty big hole. And so as they're moving up, they're just trying to suppress the hole. And actually what you see is a bad guy shooting out from that hole at them, even while taking incoming rounds. So one of the videos I did recently about switching shoulders, purpose being not overexposing yourself and being able to get your gun in the fight quicker. This is a good example of where you could probably done that. And, you know, even in this situation here, he's not aiming, he's point shooting. His rifle isn't up, you know, in his shoulder, or maybe it's in his shoulder, but he's obviously not aiming. It's tilted to the side, and that's fine. We're in such close proximity. We're in a combat zone. We're just sending rounds. But can we actually get rounds into where the bad guy is from this angle here? And I don't know the answer to that. It seems like maybe not. And switching the rifle to your shoulder allows you the first opportunity to do that, and also not overexpose yourself to get that done. In this video, you see them entering this room here, and something that I just want you to take note of again is like this idea of, you know, speed, surprise, violence of action, all that. But as they're approaching this doorway, assumably they've checked the center of the room, which is a corner fed room, and he's collapsing the room down by himself as he's going through the threshold and relatively getting out of the way. But ultimately, he's putting himself as the number one guy in the best position to engage a threat anywhere in the room, right? Because he's going to be the first one to encounter him, to see him. And then look at all the stuff that's on the floor, right, on the ground. How fast could you move across this to create an angle and also be have the ability to apply marksmanship, right? I think it would be very difficult for you to do that. This is actually the video where Nir Maman, in the podcast that I did with the Israeli soldier, mentioned that the soldiers were inside of the house, and because they were being deliberate and looking around, obviously they have an IED or a booby trap threat that they have to account for as well. They were able to see that there was things about that told them that somebody was in here, and I believe what that thing was a warm cup of coffee or a cup of coffee. And one of the soldiers mentions that he's got to be close because there's coffee right here, or a warm cup of coffee. These are just regular, I guess you're regular IDF soldiers, are not special forces. And before this gunfire portion starts, they're actually, in my opinion, kind of like moping around the inside of the structure in a way, where it seemed like they weren't really covering angles and being deliberate about the things that they were doing. And then the kind of the longer version of where this soldier steps up to kind of go this direction, you can even kind of see it here. He doesn't really have his gun up, like he's ready and anticipating an engagement with something that might be that direction, right? And luckily, when this gunfire comes in, he doesn't get killed, I don't believe, because they kind of run off, and then something happens after that. I assume they take care of the bad guy. But very lucky to have survived this. And if you wanted to check what's on the other side of that wall, now I do think that there was rooms to the right, but let's just say he had the opportunity to check this space from not right at the corner, at the 90-degree corner. You would do that from the other side of the wall. So he would be able to look in there from further away, get better idea of what's going on over there with his gun up, ready to engage. And when that gunfire starts, like you see here, it may have had less of an opportunity to hit him because most of those rounds are going to be hitting the wall right by his head. So they basically just take that gunfire, and then I don't know what happens after because the video kind of cuts off. But I think it's safe to say that if you stack up with 4 guys and you try to go into this space, it looks like there's a door on the right, it looks like there's a door directly ahead, and it looks like where he took the gunfire from was more to the left. So you have, those 3 significant problems that you have to deal with. And honestly and truly, CQB is a nightmare, and you can do the absolute best that you can. But as you get the squeeze to push forward and do this, as soon as he sees you, right, the bad guy sees you, mostly they're going to wait until they know where you are, like whether that's outside of the door or they actually see you to start shooting. If you start pushing forward right here fast, doesn't matter what speed, there's no way that you could identify where he is in that moment and address him. By the time the barrage of gunfire is already coming at you, in that moment, you probably didn't even have time to process where he could have been. He could have been close, which is unlikely, but he could have been probably tucked away somewhere behind a bed, where you couldn't even really see him, which becomes your ability to eliminate him or apply marksmanship very difficult to do. So once they get into this room area here, what you're going to see is, again, pre-firing happening. And as the soldier starts to step through, the bad guy tosses a grenade. Again, let's talk about the speed, right? If you pile into this room, you stack up, you get a squeeze, and you hit your pods, that guy's getting that grenade off, right? And you're not getting out of that room, okay? Because what's going to happen is everyone's going to see the grenade, and what's your normal reaction when you see a grenade is to unass, is to get out of there. So everyone's going to be running for the door. Maybe you recognize in time you don't have time to get to the door, so you're jumping behind the bed. But it's safe to say that, yeah, we might get that guy because if he's throwing a grenade, he's not shooting us in that moment. But, 3 or 4 guys are going to eat that grenade, and I don't think that's going to turn out very well. So they're getting into a sustained gun battle with this guy, and this is where we talk about constant pressure, right? We're holding these angles, we're denying him the freedom of movement to come out here, and he actually does. He presents his rifle outside of the threshold, and don't really know how it ends. I assume, again, that they got this guy. But surprising, right, to see that he's taking incoming rounds towards the threshold, and he still kind of presents his rifle right here and tries to engage them. Some of these rounds that they are shooting seem to be kind of inaccurate. They're hitting the wall, like behind him, before the door on the other side. Obviously, if rounds are hitting the door to the room or the threshold to the room that you're trying to come out of, you'll be less inclined to do that. So maybe some more accurate gunfire into that space would have certainly denied him the ability to do that. Somebody had mentioned something about laser discipline in one of my videos, which I'll just explain this real quick while we're here. Primarily, they're used for communicating with one another, nonverbal communication, marking things. You can have certain processes in place to tell people certain things by the pattern which you're moving your laser. Deconflict if you end up in an intersection or rooms that join where you can use your lasers to say, hey, we're friendly over here. But in this situation, it's not a bad idea to use your laser. And I'm not even talking about using it as an aiming device because you don't even need it, right? But putting your laser right on that door is going to stop that guy from probably wanting to come out, right? From a psychological perspective, you see a laser shining at the door, you assume that if you present yourself to the laser, you're going to be shot. And another reason why that's cool or that's a good thing is because what you'll see here, I think, is you can turn your laser off, right? Which may imply to the bad guy that you're not actually looking at the door now, which you could be looking at the door. So that's a tactic that you could use. You have your laser on, you're denying him access. He's not coming out, he's not coming out. You turn your laser off, but you're still holding on it. Now he thinks, oh, he must not be holding it, steps out, and turns out that you are. So The reason I have this in here is because it's important to point out, especially in a combat zone. I'm surprised it seems like such a disparity between regular, maybe I'm not surprised, but Israeli soldiers and special forces. I guess when I was in the Marines, I didn't know any better other than what I was being taught. So I just didn't even really think about anything above the infantry. But just in combat in general, you typically don't want to stay bunched up together, whether you're inside or outside, because obviously one machine gun or one grenade could take out many of you. That's not ideal. And what happens here is that kind of happens. They're bunched up in the hallway, and I don't know if the bad guy came down because the video kind of clips, or if there was a grenade thrown, which seems like probably there's a grenade thrown and they're trying to get away from there, which makes that really hard to do. So being spread out helps you mitigate that from being a significant problem. Now they're holding here on the stairs, and the bad guy kind of comes around and shows himself, and they're able to eliminate him. And what you'll see is the soldier who's holding here is engages him. He pretty much deals with him. Next guy comes up and also kind of handles that too. But what you'll see is his muzzle or his round hits the wall where the soldier is. This is the soldier shooting at the bad guy and the soldier's round hitting the wall. Nir Maman talked about that being an issue because soldiers have been killed because it bounces back or it ricochets off and hits another soldier. And he is doing a good job at keeping his muzzle beyond the corner initially. I think probably just some physiological responses and losing sight of that kind of backs off, continues to engage, and you'll see one round hit the wall where he's standing. If you'd like to support the channel, you could do that by tapping on this photo to subscribe. And if you'd like to see my review of other Israeli combat footage, make sure you're feeding the algorithm down below.